any of y'all share a room with a sibling growing up? Do any of y'all share a room with a sibling today? Let me see your hands. Okay, y'all are awesome and brave. I love you and I'm sorry. I luckily never had to share a room with anyone until I got to college. And if you've never had to do that, I'll speak from my own experience. Are you ready? It's the worst. If you're a neat person and they're messy, it's a disaster. If you like to go to sleep and they like to stay up, it's difficult. If you want to listen to hip hop while you get ready, but they love country music, it's a problem. I'm sorry if I hit any wounds for those of you who share a room, but maybe you feel the same way about your room situation, or maybe for you, it's something else. Maybe you're thinking, I can't wait to have a car that's mine. Maybe you're thinking, I can't wait to go on a trip with my friends. Or maybe you're thinking, I can't wait until I'm old enough to move out and have a dorm or apartment that is mine. Last week, Avery talked about how part of being in middle school and high school is becoming your own person. We develop hobbies of our own, a style of our own, and thoughts about our future that are our own. At the same time, part of growing up is developing a personal faith that you can call mine. We talked about how knowing about God and what Jesus said is good, but it isn't enough. If we want a mature, lasting adult faith of our own, we have to experience it. And that means doing something with what we hear. And today, we're going to talk about something else that leads to a mature faith. But before we get there, I want to clear something up. Experiencing faith for yourself isn't the same as experiencing faith by yourself. So having a faith of your own doesn't mean you never have to listen to anybody else. In fact, if you want to have a solid faith of your own, you'll need to involve other people, maybe even more than you think. We'll see you back in a second. When I was younger, most of the Christians I knew were older people, my parents, my grandparents, their friends, and they all helped shape me through my entire life, helping me become the man that God wants me to be today. And when I got into middle school, I only had a few friends who also went to my church, which meant that I was exposed to a lot of other beliefs and opinions on Christianity. Most of the relationships were good, they were just different from how I had learned things, or the vocabulary was different from what we would say normally. Now, total transparency here, guys, but I had a tendency to stick closer to the people that talked and acted similar to me, because I was nervous and scared that I would have to defend my faith with facts and proof. You see, you middle schoolers tend to think like engineers, and this means that you learn best from what is seen and tested and proven. And then high school came, and with it brought more open debate. You see, high schoolers think like philosophers, meaning that you learn from asking tough questions and thinking through tough answers. When there are two sides of debate, it helps to think through and play the devil's advocate. And my friends were very, let's say, opinionated and loved to argue just to argue. We once had a contest to see who could get this one friend to argue about the most ridiculous thing. But during high school, I also became a lot closer with my youth minister, and we're still friends today. He and I would have some great, meaningful conversations that helped shape me into the person that I am. My high school years were also influenced by the jobs that I had. I've mentioned this before, but I worked at Box Office Video for 8 years, and we had all kinds of people that came into the store. But one thing the owners there taught me was how to treat even the most awkward, weird, smelly, poor, or strange-looking people just like you would treat anybody else. And another job I had was working at K-Tab Studios as the camera guy and audio operator. It was awesome. It was a job where, as a high schooler, I was working with nothing but adults. And I had the opportunity to learn from some really fantastic people as well as how to interact with people who had no faith. And I can easily look at these relationships and see how God used them to intersect with my faith story. I have a faith of my own, but these people will always be major characters in my journey. And this is true for almost everybody who has a faith of their own. Whenever you hear a story about someone's journey toward God, you always hear about a relationship, not just with God, but with another person. And maybe you've experienced this too. Maybe your journey has involved someone who invited you to church, to youth group, to Bible study, or something at school like FCA. Maybe it was someone who helped change the way you think about God. And this can be someone who impacted you with one conversation, or maybe it was a series of conversations. Maybe it was someone who you watched and observed, and they lived a different way. Maybe one of those relationships brought you here to small groups, or brought you here a long time ago. To put it simply, the people around us affect our faith. That's true in both positive and negative ways. Just like the right people can move our faith in the right direction, the wrong people can move our faith in the wrong direction. And you've probably seen that happen. Maybe you have friends who used to be all about their faith, and then they started hanging out with a different crowd. And it's not that they're bad people, it's just obvious that their friends are pulling them away. And here are the big questions. If the people around us have a huge impact on our lives and our faith, how do we find the right people who can help us? And how do we prevent being affected by the wrong ones? I want to start by sharing an ancient piece of wisdom with you, and I'm not exaggerating. In ancient cultures, books were written that contained nothing but wisdom and good advice. In Jewish cultures, those sayings were collected into a book that we now call Proverbs. And even though the advice is old, it's amazing how relevant it is to our lives right now. Check this out. Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm. Proverbs 13:20. If I were to pick a verse every freshman had to memorize, or every sixth grader I wanted to memorize before starting middle school or high school, it might be this one. You don't have to be a Christian for this to be useful for you. It's true for everybody. The people you choose to spend time with will affect your life. Hanging out with the wise, and you'll become smarter and do life better. Hang out with fools, and you're probably going to get hurt. Now, we can all think of celebrities who at 15, 16, 17 seemed to be on a good path, and then something happened and things began to go downhill for them. And if you watch any type of documentary on their life, they almost always say the same thing years later. They began to surround themselves with the wrong people. And Paul talked about a similar idea when he wrote to the church in Corinth. It was a church full of people who had decided to follow Jesus, but they were having a hard time stopping the things that they had been doing before, things that people around them continued to do. So Paul said this, "Do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character." Here's what Paul's basically saying. If you want to move in a better direction, hang out with the people who want the same thing. The wrong influences will impact you in ways that cause negative behaviors and outcomes. And just as she who walks with the wise will be wise, she who walks with fools will be foolish. You've probably seen this happen before. Maybe your best friend started hanging out with a certain guy. Everyone knew this guy was trouble. He was notorious for doing bad stuff, but your friend was clueless. What was the outcome? I'm willing to bet that your friend changed. And how do I know? Well, it's not because I'm psychic. It's a timeless principle that's universally true. Walk with the wise and you'll grow wise, but bad company corrupts good morals. That's why even though Jesus calls us to love everybody, we don't have to hang out with everybody. We don't just have to date anybody. We don't have to trust everybody's advice. If the people around us affect us, then we have to be careful about who they are. But this isn't just negative. It's equally as true for people who are a good influence. Back to the book of Proverbs. Proverbs 27:17, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. Now, we don't work much with iron, but chances are good that your family has a good set of steak knives in the kitchen. And over time, those knives become dull. And if your mom wanted to sharpen them, she'd get a stronger piece of metal and strike the two against each other, of course, after watching a YouTube tutorial. But the two metals interacting with each other will make the knife sharper. And this is also true wisdom when it comes to the people around us. Stronger friends make us stronger. Strong friends make us sharper and better at whatever we're doing, including our faith. Think of it this way. If you want a faith of your own, you can't build it alone. That's why small groups are such a big deal, guys. Every time they meet, every time you meet, they provide an opportunity for us to sharpen each other. We can challenge each other and grow together. And making the decision to engage with small group every week is like saying, God, I can't create these relationships on my own. But I trust that if I put myself in their pathway, you can make change happen. And trust me, you need this. Maybe not right now, but there will come a point in your life when life gets confusing or difficult. There will be a time when your faith feels weak and fragile. Whether it's a big decision or a painful mess, you'll want to know that someone is just a text message away. That's your small group and your small group leader. That's why one of the best things you can do for your life and your faith this week is simply engage in small group. And I'm not just talking about physically showing up on Zoom. Maybe you need to show up mentally. Take a break from your phone and be there. Maybe you need to start showing up for the people in your small group by actually hanging out with them outside of small group, especially in this time. Call someone, text someone, check in on the other people in your group. Maybe you've been holding back because you don't know anyone that well and it makes you feel uncomfortable. But if you want to grow your faith, take a step and put yourself out there. Maybe you need some one-on-one time. You're dealing with some things that are too difficult to figure out alone. Or maybe you really want to take your faith to the next level and you've met someone older who seems like they could help. Today is a great day for you to start a conversation with your small group leader. You could say something like, hey, I really admire the way that you intentionally live out your faith and I could really use some of your advice. Would it be cool if we met one-on-one or if we FaceTimed one-on-one? Maybe you know someone who could really use some encouragement or truth spoken to them in their world. You know it would be great if you encourage them, but you maybe feel like you aren't qualified to do that. But one of the best things you can do for your faith is to encourage someone in their faith. Because this isn't just about helping you. Just like you need sharpening and growing and wise relationships in your life, it's possible that someone else needs a faith-building relationship with you in their life. When you show up each week, not only do you get that kind of friendship, but you also become that kind of friend for someone else. Maybe it's time you pray and ask God to open your eyes to how you can build faith in someone else just by being around them. God has been using relationships to reach and grow us through the very beginning of time. It's one of the huge ways that He helps us grow our faith. And if we want a faith of our own, one of the biggest decisions we'll make is who plays a major role in our lives. So as you head out today, I want you to think about the relationships that draw you closer to God. Who do you wish you could hang out with more because you want your faith to look like their faith? And now what are you going to do about it? Are you willing to take a step, make someone a priority, and invite them into your life? In doing so, you may just find that nothing grows your relationship with God like a godly relationship with someone else.